Rosh Chodesh Elul. We're beginning the month of Elul. Ani lidodi vidodi li. I'm to the love is to me. And it's a month of introspection, we'll see, and a month to begin the tshuva process. But before we get specifically to Rosh Chodesh Elul, let's discuss the concept of Rosh Chodesh in general and how it relates to the month of Elul. So the Torah tells us in Parashas Bo, HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodoshim, that we learn out the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. We learn out the mitzvah that we count the year by, that we go by a lunar cycle. We go follow the lunar cycle, not the solar. So we have in our calendar 354 days a year, and every couple of years I think it's seven time in 19 years we have a leap year, and we have 383 days. On a solar calendar there's 365. But what's unique, there are other religions also that follow a lunar calendar, but what's unique to Judaism is we actually combine the lunar and the solar. So for instance, the Arabs, the Muslims, they go by a lunar calendar, purely lunar. And therefore, their holidays, for example, Ramadan, which I believe is coming to an end soon, already ended, I'm not sure, but Ramadan falls out at any time of the year. I remember many years ago when I was watching a basketball game in May. It was in the playoffs, and one of the players, Hakeem Olajuwon, he was a born-again Muslim, and they said he was fasting on Ramadan. I was wondering why they never mentioned it before. Like, I've seen him play many times and they never mentioned he was fasting. And then I realized, because they go by a lunar calendar, so there are no seasons. If you go by a lunar calendar, if Ramadan could fall in the winter, the summer, spring, or fall. So what's unique to Judaism, we combine both the lunar, we follow a lunar, but we have a solar correction. Every couple of years we add a leap year because we have to be true to the seasons. Passover has to be in the spring, Sukkot has to be in the fall. And therefore we combine both. And the commentators point out is because the sun represents stability. We know sunrise, sunset, and the moon represents change. It's always waxing and waning. It's getting larger, smaller. That represents rebirth and redemption, change, creativity. And we all know that a person needs stability and creativity in his life. A person, if you do the same thing all the time, you eat the same thing all the time, it becomes boring. But if you're on a road trip your whole life, that's not good either. You need a roof over your head, you need stability. So therefore we combine both. Judaism combines both, so we have the sun, which represents stability, and the moon, which represents creativity. And that's why we combine both, and that's what the moon represents. The waxing and waning is a reflection of Jewish history, that at times it looks like Klal Yisrael are going to be destroyed, disappear. It's like the moon, it looks like it's disappearing until it comes back later on. So that's what the moon represents from a historical point of view. Another interesting explanation from the Ibn Ezra is the Torah tells us in the Bereshis, Aleph Tezayim 1:16, the Torah tells us in the fourth day of creation, the moon and the sun are referred to the Ma'oros Hagedolim, the Great Luminaries. And as well, when the pasuk continues, it talks about the stars, but it doesn't mention anything about luminaries. And the Ibn Ezra raises the question, which makes it even more striking, is the stars are much larger than the moon. So why would they call the moon one of the great luminaries, but not call the stars the greater luminaries? So the Ibn Ezra explains that when we say the moon is one of the great luminaries, it's not by the size of the moon, because as we said, the stars are much greater, but it's defined by the benefit given to others. The stars might be much brighter, much bigger, but the fact that we're so far away, no one really benefits from it. By contrast, the moon, which shines brightly at night, especially if you're up in the country, the Catskills, where there's less light, you really appreciate the moon. So the Ibn Ezra says they get the title Great Luminary because of their tremendous impact on earth. And therefore, as we see from the Ibn Ezra, real greatness isn't by how much innate abilities you have, how much wealth, how much greatness. It's all about using our abilities. It depends how much we use our abilities to help others. When the moon, the reason why the moon gets the title Great Luminaries, Ma'oros HaGadolim, is because its benefit to humankind. And that's what our rabbis are telling us, that how does one go from a star to a luminary? By basically bringing light to a place where there wasn't, shining light, giving benefit to someone who ordinarily would not get it if not for you. And that's the greatness of the moon, not in size, but its benefit to humans. And that's as we explained, the different, the month of Elul is that, as we mentioned, Ani Ladodi V'Dodi Li, it shows the relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's not just about our relationship at Adam U'Makom, between man and God. It's our relationship at Adam U'Chaveiro as well. It's our interpersonal relationships. And that's what the month of Elul, a time of, there's a minhag, as we'll go into, we'll give a whole class on it, but there's a minhag during the month of Elul. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings it down, others, to check your tefillin and mezuzahs, Alicia mezuzahs, during this time period. And even though we'll get into mezuzahs twice every 7 years, but you're going to check them in the month of Elul. And really it's an illusion that not only are we checking our mezuzahs, but obviously an internal bedika. We also have to do our own checking, checking our own actions. And that's why they point out that the Vilna Gaon pointed out, we mentioned by Birkas Hamazon, that why was Birkas Hamazon picked as an example where God shows His chen on us, because Birkas Hamazon, that instead of benching on eating a full meal, we bench on less than a meal, and therefore God loves us for that. So if we want to go and ask in Mishlei, there are many things we do. Why love us for that? So the Vilna Gaon explains it because he gives a mashal with the person who has 10 kezesim, 10 olive sides, and that equals a full kedesa, a full meal. And instead of, he has two choices. He could eat all 10 for himself and therefore be obligated in benching minat Torah, or he could share it with 9 other aniyim. So the Vilna Gaon too, that's the greatness, that a person shares it with 9 other aniyim. So therefore, not only are you doing but Adam wa Makom by benching, and therefore you're able to introduce Elokeinu, but you're also doing but Adam wa Chaveiro, and that's what we have to work out during the month of Elul when we prepare for Rosh Hashanah, the balance between mitzvahs bet Adam wa Makom and mitzvahs bet Adam wa Chaveiro. And that's why, as we explained, the Aseres HaDibros, the 2 tablets, the first side is mitzvahs ben Adam la Makom, and the second side, mitzvahs bet adam l'chavero, and the trick is to be able to combine both sides and live a complete life. And that's the famous Meshach Chochmah in Parashat Vayera, about where the word Yerushalayim comes from, Jerusalem. So Yerushalayim from Yiras Hashem, that's fear of God, mitzvahs b'nam makom. And Shalom, peace, is learning how to deal and treat other people properly. So Yerushalayim, it's a combination of mitzvahs between man and God, and mitzvahs bet adam lechavero. And that's why, we know why was the Beis HaMikdash destroyed. So there were different reasons given for Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni. One reason is because they violated the illicit relations and idol worship. So obviously they were lacking in the Yeru part, the Yireh part. So hence the temple was destroyed, because we're not zocha to Yerushalayim, because we didn't have the Ben Makom. On the other hand as well, it was destroyed because of sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred. And we see that Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So it was lacking in Medam Chaveros. In order for us, as we say on Tisha B'Av, whoever is mis'abel over Yerushalayim is able to see Yerushalayim b'binyano. So that's what the Meshach Chochmah is saying here. In order to keep Yerushalayim and to rebuild Yerushalayim, i.e. with the Kedushas, Yerushalayim gets its Kedusha from the Kedushas HaMikdash. In order to get to Yerushalayim, the Beis HaMikdash b'binyano, we have to rectify both sides of the tablets. We got to be able to keep the mitzvahs b'nam l'makom and the mitzvahs b'nam l'chaver, and that's what the challenges of Chodesh Elul is all about. We begin with Rosh Chodesh, time of change and newness, creativity, and then in addition now, the month before Rosh Hashanah, Elul ani l'dodi v'dodi li, it's the time of having a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as the Ibn Ezra says, how do you become from a star to a luminary? By shining light where there previously wasn't any. And that applies to clearly mitzvahs b'nam l'chavero, but as the Meshach Chochmah has explained, in order to get Yerushalayim b'binyano, in order to serve God completely and be ready for Yom Hadin and to do the proper bedika, like you do bedika by mezuzah, we have to be meticulous in both mitzvahs ben adar l'makom and mitzvahs adam l'chavero.